Hello. I have been needing to film this video for a while, but I got sick. Insert this clip. Hey friends, it is April 28th. I've now been sick for 10 days, and Alex, she came down with a really bad fever on Tuesday at 2 a.m. Wednesday morning, her dad and I took her to the hospital, and yeah, and she came back with a positive COVID test result. So I got tested this morning. My result was positive, so got COVID over here. So I was wanting to film a video about postpartum, but with my voice being scratchy last week, being sick last week, I didn't. No, she's sick. So hopefully this will just be the precursor to that video as to like why I haven't uploaded. Here she is. We're outside getting some fresh air. She's currently taking a nap, and I just got home from work, and I really wanted to just go watch American Idol with my family, but I was like, I need to film this video, so here we are. Today I've actually been thinking a lot about just how like different my life is now compared to last year. Like I got married at 21 and I'm 24. It's like these last 3 years, and last year not being married, like it's weird. It's weird. And I keep thinking about, will I be 25 or 26 when I get married, or older, you know? And then I have no idea when that'll happen. But it's just been on my mind a lot today about just how different life is. It's not a bad thing, but it's definitely not what I expected life to be. Anyway, let's get to the chase, I guess. This video I wanted to talk about my emotional state during pregnancy and birth specifically, and then about postpartum. In the very beginning of when I got pregnant, when we found out it was a girl, I don't know why, but that was like so hard for me to take. I was happy. I was like literally would cry tears of happiness when I would pray. Mostly just because I was pregnant, but yes, because I was having a girl. But I was also like terrified to have a girl because of a dream I had, and the child died young. Like in the dream, like, oh crap, I don't want to have a girl that never die as a kid. I feel like my pregnancy was really easy, and I'm honestly so grateful for that. Like I had morning sickness, but I never threw up. Like I was slightly nauseous in the mornings, but like I worked in the mornings, and so I would just get nauseous at work. I could just pull my mask down and put my face in front of a fan and be fine. My pregnancy overall was really easy. In the very end, I got like super swollen feet, but that was probably like the worst symptom. I mean, I did get heartburn, but I don't feel like it was any worse or better than the average. So pregnancy was honestly really easy physically. Obviously, emotionally was hard because you're pregnant. Like pregnancy's hard. So I think just something that was really hard for me, which I don't know, I feel like is somewhat normal, but it was also really difficult for me, is my ex-husband would like not really show much interest in the baby. Like when I was pregnant, he would like put his hands on my stomach and say, "Kick me, Alex." Obviously, like that's not gonna happen. But when we were like sitting on the couch or laying in bed or whatnot, and I'd be like, "Oh, she's moving," he would like not even care. It was really hard because like he didn't show much interest, and he would honestly say a lot of the time, "Well, I can't do anything, she's not here yet." And that was hard because I was like, you can do things. As I've said before, we decided to get divorced 3 weeks before Alex was born. So going into labor, up to that point, my hospital was still only allowing one person to be with you. And I knew without a doubt that if he was the one person I had there, it wouldn't have gone well, but even worse than it did. I immediately called my doctor like that day when we found out, because I was like, I cannot do this if I just have him there. So she talked to the nurses, and they were like, to explain the situation. They're like, okay, like, and they ended up lifting the rule for labor and delivery so that you could have 2 people. And so I chose Hannah to go with me. My mom and I's relationship wasn't great at the time, and so I didn't feel really comfortable having her there. Plus, she did not, like, my ex-husband hated her, and so that would have been really hard. So Angie suggested Hannah. I think they talked about it before, and so Hannah decided that she would be willing to, and I was beyond grateful. Still so grateful. It's just, yeah, I have no words to describe how amazing it was to have her there, which I think I talked about in my last video, her like support there. This is an emotional thing, but like a really stupid thing of me. My ex-husband, he had to be right about everything. He had to be right. He couldn't take no for an answer, basically. So he had like guessed the day she'd be born. I obviously guessed her due date. I was like really hopeful that she'd be born on her due date, but she was 3 days late. He had guessed like the Saturday before she was born. She was born on Monday. Every ounce of my being was like, she cannot be born today, because he cannot be right about the day she's born. She came when she decided to. She came the day my friend wanted her to be born. That was just a funny thing, but I was seriously like, she cannot be born that day. She cannot make him right. That didn't happen, thankfully. And then even in labor, it was like, she was born at 12:55, and my whole thing was like, as long as she's born before we hit 12 hours, and she was born at 1 o'clock, or we started labor at 1 o'clock. Technically, labor started at 2, because I got Pitocin at 2, but we got there at 1. So I was like, as long as it's not 2 hours, and we were literally 5 minutes shy of 12 hours. So I was very happy about that. So my guess was 1 o'clock, or at least before that. I think he guessed midnight. Hannah had guessed like 10 or something like that. So when Hannah's guess passed 10 o'clock, he was like, oh, Hannah, you're not right. Like, just so childish. And then when his guess came, I can't remember what he said, but it was something like, Amy, you're probably not going to be right. Just, he had to be right, or no one could be right if he wasn't. So technically none of us were right, but I was the closest. Which wasn't even a guess, it was just like a desire. So labor was really hard. It's hard no matter what, but like not having the person I made the baby with be there emotionally and physically and mentally to help me was really hard. And I think at this point I've kind of suppressed those emotions. Like even now I have like a little bit of emotion coming up, but I'm like, no, I don't want to feel that because it was so hard. Right when I got to the hospital, he literally showed up like 3 minutes after I did. So he left, went and got food, came back. I think by the time he came back, I was already started on Pitocin. Yeah, I was, because he wasn't there when they gave me my IV, which I was really grateful for, is that the nurse who gave me the IV, she was also getting a divorce at the time, and so we were talking about that, and it was nice that he wasn't there for that, so we could talk about him. Obviously, shift change happened, but it would have been so nice to have her there through the whole thing, because she was so nice, and she understood what I wanted. She wrote it all on the whiteboard, and I don't know, she was just she cared a lot, and it was really nice to like have her support emotionally. They gave me the IV, he showed up, and I was like sitting in bed, and he was eating his food, and he starts talking about a date he went on and how he ripped his pants during this date while I'm in labor. We literally had been separated for 3 weeks, and he'd already gone on a date. I was like boiling inside. I was so mad, but I didn't say anything because I knew I would set him off. Like I didn't want to fight. I didn't say anything. I was like steaming. I can't remember like time-wise how this happened. I feel like it was fairly quick this happened, because he was sitting on the birth ball when he was talking about this while he was eating. He continued to talk, and he started talking about all these guns that he had and how he was gonna get a new car, like just. And I looked at him and I was like, I'm literally in labor right now having your child. I do not want to hear about your car. Like, I just was like, I need you to shut up. And such a child, he literally, because I told him to shut up, he went and sat in the chair that was in the corner of the room the entire time. Didn't say a word the entire time. Took a nap, watched YouTube videos, just sat there. Didn't do anything. Nothing. Hannah and I, throughout the labor, as things were progressing, this is specifically after I got an epidural, we were watching the monitor, and you could see there were like 4 lines or something. One was contractions, one was my heart rate, Alex's heart rate, stuff like that. And so we were like talking about it, like trying to decide on our own, like, oh, which one's which. And then like when the nurse came in at one point and we asked her, and we were right. We figured this is the one that has the contractions because we could see the big waves and whatnot. So finally, we're like at the point where I'm about to push. So he gets out of the chair because they ask him to, and he's holding my leg, and he looks at the monitor. He's like, what are each of the lines for? And Hannah and I were just like, you've got to be kidding me. You've literally been here for these entire 12 hours. We had this conversation between us and with the nurse, and you still don't know what they are? I was just so annoyed that he literally was paying 0 attention. I even talked to one of my friends on the phone. I think I even video chatted her, and she was so mad that my ex was just sitting in the chair. It was ridiculous. And the fact that me in pain, like some of the worst pain I've ever been in, 1, he talks about going on a date. 2, he gets mad that I tell him to shut up and he goes and sulks in the corner. I still can't wrap my brain around that. He's such a child. I'm so glad I don't have to tell that. Side note, been on a few dates recently, and one of the guys was like, well, so what are some deal breakers you have? And I was like, pretty much don't be my ex-husband and we're fine. It's true. Like, there's so many things about him that I absolutely despise. And I hate it even more now because, like, he's changed back into who he is, which is who I married. Like, he's a nice guy now. He actually asked me how I was doing the other day, and I was like, where have you been the last 2 years? It is what it is. I was grateful to have him there when Alex was born. I mean, that's the whole reason he was there, is to be there for Alex. Oh, I just remembered this. So I'm pushing Hannah, the nurses, the doctor, they're all telling like, good job, baby, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, so I'm like pushing, doing the thing. The whole time I'm pushing, he's like, come on, Alex, you got this, Alex, come on. The whole time he was saying that, in my brain I'm thinking, she's not doing anything. I'm doing this. Shut up. Oh, I was so annoyed that he had zero care for me and how I was doing. He didn't care one bit how I was doing. But he was like, come on, Alex, you got this. Which, like, looking back, it's fine. Like, it's not a bad thing that he was saying that. But inside, I was just so mad that he didn't care 1 ounce about me. He never once said good job. Never once has said thank you for having his child. At this point, I'm just kind of mad. I'm not emotional anymore. After Alex was born, I started hemorrhaging, and he was with her the whole time. They were taking care of me. And then again, not once did he ask if I was okay, and I was like, I almost passed out. Yeah, hemorrhaging was absolutely horrific, and like, it was insane. My doctor, her arm was literally up in me to her elbow, just trying to get my placenta out. Stitching up was painful. Them kneading my stomach, so painful. They took Alex at 7 to NICU, but like during that time, obviously like she was gone for other tests and whatnot. Hannah and him held her more than I did, partially because I felt sick and had a fever and I couldn't hold her, but even then, like, Hannah held her most of the time. He didn't even hold her that much. He was just on his phone or asleep most of the time. So fast forward, they took me up to recovery at like 7, probably about 9ish, 10ish in the morning. The person who's like the spiritual whatever at the hospital, she came down and talked to me. I don't know if that's something that's normal or if they just asked her to come down because of my situation. I'm not sure, but I talked to her for a good hour and a half probably about birth and everything, and just how hard it was. She really wanted me to just like talk it out. But at that time, like, I wasn't bitter, I wasn't angry. Like, I used the word grateful at least 100 times in that conversation. She, like, after I got done talking for a little bit, she was just like, gone through something so hard, and the fact that you are so grateful, that's amazing. Like, that's like a spiritual gift that you have. That was really cool. To be able to talk to her. We talked about like the divorce, we talked about birth, all the trauma with that, and everything he did or didn't do for that matter. And then in the middle of our conversation, he got there, so she left, and she came back an hour or so later and was like, was that him? And she's like, how did that conversation go when I left and whatnot? And it was really nice. She checked in. Side note, she was the mom of an elder I served with in my mission, so that was kind of funny when she found out where I served. Anyway, when my ex-husband came to see Alex, but at the time I think she was having her antibiotics or something, and so he couldn't see her, couldn't hold her while she had her IV meds going, and so he came up to see me, which I was really shocked by, to be honest. Like, she wasn't with me because she was in the NICU. Like, he had no reason to come talk to me. It was weird that he did. I mean, we had a decent conversation. It wasn't bad or anything. But I was really annoyed because he said, you know, I wanted to be there for everything. I was really mad that you didn't let me be there for that epidural. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I was so annoyed. I was like, that was for me. The epidural wasn't for Alex. It had to do with me being in an insane amount of pain and not being able to move. And I was like, that was such a vulnerable moment for me. Like, I was legitimately crying on Hannah's chest. I would not have been able to be comfortable with you there. And you wouldn't have helped me. You would have just sat there. It's like, I was so annoyed that he was so selfish, saying I wanted to be there for everything, that he didn't at all care about my emotional and mental state. That was one of the hardest times when I told him to shut up and he went and sat in the chair and literally did nothing. And then when he told me, like, well, you know, I wanted to be there, like, too bad. Had nothing to do with him, but to do with me, the mother of his child, who was literally bringing his child into the world. It was very annoying. That was birth, the emotional part of it. So postpartum was hard. It was interesting. Alex being in the NICU, I stayed with my sister, who lived like 15 minutes from the hospital during that week while Alex was there. I would at least go to the hospital once, if not twice, sometimes 3 times in a day, but I would pump every 2 hours, on the dot, every 2 hours. So albeit I wasn't waking up with a baby, I was up every 2 hours for a week. Plus like 2 hours getting up to pump. I'd pump and then go to the hospital to take the milk to them, stay there for 30 to 45 minutes depending on how she was doing, feed her again while I was there if I could, if I hadn't just pumped, and then I would go home, sleep a little bit more, do the same thing. Like I said, I only went 2 or 3 times a day. I would go every single day. I forgot this. At 7 o'clock, when they told us that Alex was gonna go to the NICU, my ex-husband was like, not happy that she was going, but he just said, oh, awesome, like she'll be around here, I'll be able to see her more. Guess how many times he went to see her? Twice. Once when his mom got there into town, and one other time. 2 times in a week. I had been asking him to give Alex a blessing since she was born, mostly because she was in the NICU, like she was having literal health issues, and it felt like pulling teeth to get him to give her a blessing. I asked him once when I knew he was there with his mom. He was like, oh, I can't, my mom's here. Well, when can you go? Well, I don't know. And then a couple days later I was like, do you actually want to give her a blessing, or do you want me to find someone else to do it? Because I'm sure there's a male nurse or doctor in the hospital that would be more than happy to do it. He was like, no, I want to do it. I was like, okay, well then when are you gonna do it? He still said, well, I don't know when I can. So I texted him the next day or something, and I was like, when can we meet at the hospital to go give her a blessing? And he was like, oh, I'm here right now. And I was like, okay, well, can you give her a blessing? And he was like, I guess. Asked him again, do you want to do it? I can find someone else to do it. He's like, no, I'm here, I'll go do it. Like an hour later, I even asked him, like, well, since I can't be there, since you're doing this so soon, like you're already at the hospital, can you call me while you do it? No call, no saying it's done, no nothing. An hour or so later, did you give her a blessing? He was like, yep, sweet, glad you did it. So he saw her 2 times while she was in the NICU, where I saw her every day, sometimes multiple times a day, most of the time multiple times a day. I would hold her, I would cry, I would breastfeed. So when they first moved her down, it's like the day she was born, I napped for a little bit, mostly just pumped. I think I ate. I didn't eat, actually. I just went down and saw her, and because like her neutrophil count was so low, meaning she was extra susceptible to sickness, I had to like be fully gowned, wear a mask, and a mask mandatory at a hospital even now, but I'd wear gloves, and we never did skin to skin because she was in the isolette, it's called, like the little box. I'll insert some pictures here to show that first time really holding her. It was such a precious time. She was so tiny. I just held her, changed her diaper, and it was terrible though, because I was in the full like plastic medical gown, gloves. I was dripping, legitimately dripping sweat. It was so nasty. So I'll insert the other pictures here of what I look like, because I was like covered in sweat. So I went back up to my room and took a shower for the first time. I don't even think I washed my hair, because I didn't expect to have that crazy of birth, and don't expect to be that messy, I guess. Like 2 days after I went home from hospital, staying at my sister's house, I ended up developing an infection. So I was like so nauseous, had such a high fever, like I was just so freezing, and body aches, birth, and then getting hit with that, like I was already weak. I had already lost a ton of blood. It was horrible. I was like, kept checking my temperature. I was like, I don't know what should I do? Like I was taking ibuprofen and whatnot to keep it down, still feeling like crap. So I ended up asking my brother-in-law for a blessing, and then talking to my sister more. She was like, I think you should go to the hospital. So we ended up going to the ER at the hospital Alex was at. I got my pump, got everything ready to go. My pump bottles were dirty, so like I was like, okay, I'll just wash them at the hospital. So I get to the hospital, get me in fairly quickly, thankfully. And I'm like waddling just gave birth 2 days ago. They get me in the room. They're like, well, maybe it's a UTI. So I had already used the bathroom, so they had to cath me. That was so painful. They had to like wipe down there excessively with alcohol wipes. So I had like 2-day-old fresh stitches that they had to wipe. And thinking about that pain literally puts my stomach in knots because it hurts so bad. So they ended up cathing me, got enough urine. The catheter in itself is uncomfortable when you're not numb or like under anesthesia, but goodness. The catheter plus the wiping, whew, terrible feeling. They did that, came back negative. So they're like, well, the only other thing it could be, since you just had a baby, is a uterine infection. Couldn't test for that. There was nothing they could do to figure out if that's what it was. They just were like, okay, it's probably what it is. So they gave me an antibiotic and felt better right away, thankfully. But I was also super concerned if I could breastfeed. And we asked the doctor there. They were like, I don't know. So they asked NICU. They didn't know. So I had to wait a whole another day. I had to go to the store right after having a baby, without my baby, to go pick up these antibiotics. But I was so worried about taking them because Alex was on antibiotics. And I was like, I don't know if if it's gonna cause an issue with breastfeeding. I was like so worried. So I just made sure to label that milk that it had the antibiotics in it. And thankfully it was fine. Like the doctor ended up saying like, yeah, it's fine. She can have it. It's not gonna interfere with anything, thankfully. So I had that infection. It went away fairly quickly. Still wasn't fun. So like the day before Alex came home, which even then we didn't ever know when she was coming home because they were like, oh, 3 days, and then it was 5 days, and then it was 6 days, and then she ended up coming home on day 7. The whole time my ex's mom was in town as well. Like we didn't know if she would even be able to see her because she wasn't staying that long. I think she stayed 3 days past when Alex was born, something like that, or when she got out of the hospital. Alex's dad didn't see her a whole ton when she was really little. Granted, I wouldn't let him take her because she was so little. Even like the state statutes for visitation, like you couldn't take the baby from the home until she was 6 months old. So that's basically what we did. He had her a few times before that, but it wasn't very often. But so like him coming out here to see her was not that often. I'm pretty sure, I never did the math, but I'm pretty certain that the entire 7 weeks I was on maternity leave, he probably saw her a total of 24 hours. And the longest stretch he was ever here was when his mom was here. For those couple days, he would come with her. And most of the time, he would fall asleep on the couch. There's a picture I'll put here that his mom took of me feeding Alex a bottle. I'm really grateful for the picture. But I just think about how I felt in that moment. Like, just so sad and mad at him because this wasn't what it was supposed to look like at all. I wasn't supposed to be the only one getting up with her in the middle of the night. I was supposed to be back at home with him, having his support and being able to have his help, have him be there for me emotionally through the difficult times, to be able to lean on him through the time she was in the NICU. That's what should have happened. And that was the hardest thing about postpartum. The hardest thing, hands down. Just like the thoughts when I would get up in the middle of the night, even now sometimes, I shouldn't be doing this alone. And thank goodness I've never actually been alone. Living with family, there's always someone here, and they've been so much of a help. I can't even imagine having to go through all of that alone. The divorce, having a brand new baby. Really grateful I don't have to know what it would have been like to be alone. It was just so hard. The middle of the night feedings, the doctor's appointments, everything was so hard. Because her neutrophil count was so low, she had to have blood work every week. So we had to drive out to Primary Children's every week to have the heel prick done. My mom would go with me most of the time. Funny story. One of the times we went, I had already gotten there. I had backed into the stall and my mom was on her way. So she's coming. So I don't know how this happened, but she hit my car and I'm like, what are you doing? Like freaking out, literally waving my arms like in the car, like, what are you doing? And she thought that I was waving her forward. So she kept driving. So she like hit my car and then like scraped down the side of it. And my passenger door still squeaks open. It was like not a bad accident. We didn't do anything about it because there was just like superficial damage done. But oh my gosh, it was the funniest thing. Like, I got out of the car and there's a bunch of people watching, and I was like, that's my mom. And they were just like, wait, what? And I was like, isn't it the kid who hits the mom's car, not the mom who hits the kid's car? It's funny. Good memory that we'll tell Alex as she grows up. Alex had these appointments, blood draws. She had obviously her like monthly checkups. Her dad didn't start coming to the monthly checkups till she was like 6 months old. He was always welcome to, he just never asked to. Granted, I never asked him to be there. It was like one time, I think when she was 6 months old, I was like, hey, you can come if you want to. And so he did, and he's been almost every time since. I don't know why he didn't in the beginning. Probably just he didn't want to be around me, which is fine because I don't want to be around him. It's probably why he didn't come around a lot when she was really little, which is also fine, but like, put aside your pride, dude. Suffer through the awkwardness to see your baby. So he would, yeah, like I said, those 7 weeks I was on maternity leave, he didn't come very often. Maybe once a week. Very seldom. It was hard every time he was here. I didn't feel like I could be around. Most of the time, she's awake. Most of the time, he would hang out with her in her room, which was my room at the time. And that was really uncomfortable to me because I was like, I get that that's Alex's room, but it's my room too, and I don't feel comfortable with you being in my personal space. He didn't often stay very long, which I can't tell if she's standing up or sitting down. He's just talking. I'll wait till she starts crying. We separated in March, and the divorce was final in June. So along with having a brand new baby, I was also filing for divorce. So I had to, she wasn't born yet, thankfully, when I filed. So like those first couple trips to the courthouse, so I was still pregnant, but then I had to take a brand new baby with me to the courthouse to file paperwork, to pay for everything, for all of the things. And that was not something anyone should have to go through. I know I've said this several times on my channel, but like, I hope to be a support for someone who needs it, but golly, I hope no one has to go through it either. I really hope no one has to go through it because it was some of the hardest months of my life. I mean, it's still hard at times, definitely not as hard, but it was some of the most emotionally challenging times, like even compared to my marriage. It was different because in my marriage, it was like emotional abuse. He literally made everything my fault, whether it was or not. Like, he put the blame on me. So it was easier in that regard. Like, that wasn't happening all the time. But the emotional trauma of not having the person that should be there for me was really hard. Like, even now, I'm happy. And it's sometimes really weird to think about because I feel like I deserve to not be happy. Like, it's terrible, but I feel like I deserve to be treated the way he treated me. Sometimes I don't feel like I should be happy. But I'm happy, but I also want to be happy with someone. And I cannot wait for the day to be able to get married and have another baby and actually have that person be there for me. To like have that person care about me more than the kid. Not in a terrible way that they don't care about the kid, but like that I'm more important to them than the baby. I can't wait to find someone who actually loves me and who I love. She's so sweet. Her sleep's been kind of rough with her being sick. For the majority of the day, all of the days that I was home from work, she slept in bed with me. I'd put her to bed in her bed, and then she'd end up with me just because I was like, I'm not getting up every 2 hours. But last night she slept all the way until 3 o'clock and then got up at like 3:30, which is when my first alarm goes off, and then I wake up at 4. So like that whole half hour I'm sleeping, she was awake. So I was up in there. Ended up giving her a bottle, and then she went back to sleep till 8 o'clock this morning, which was great. I can't think of much more to say, plus she's awake, so I should get going. Reflecting on everything it's been good, but difficult. It was really hard, very difficult time in my life, and something I hope I never have to experience again. And birth is hard in itself. Having a traumatic birth was hard. But everything together, I don't know how I did it. A lot of women struggle with postpartum depression. The depression I experienced postpartum was vastly different than the depression I experienced in my marriage. Compared to how I felt in my marriage, I wasn't depressed. I had an easy emotional postpartum, which is so hard to like fathom compared to like the emotional trauma and useless feelings I had, and that everything was my fault. to being able to move past that to a place where I had a purpose. I have a purpose. If I had to go through my divorce without Alex, I would not be in the same state I am emotionally and mentally. Having her to be accountable for, to stay alive for, to support literally with my body and life, she is the reason I'm at the place I am right now. It was the most crappy of timing, but the absolute best timing as well. Thanks for watching, and it's nice to talk about this too. Especially because like the postpartum or the birth video was so easy. I'm grateful I was able to let my emotions show a little bit for this. So, see you out there.